Hello, this is Doug Shadell, State Director for AARP Washington. Welcome to this important discussion about how scammers all over the country are using the coronavirus pandemic as a way to trick you out of your hard-earned money. Today, we will be discussing the latest information about how these scams work and how you can avoid them with some of the leading experts in the country. We are really fortunate today to have representatives from the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the State Department of Financial Institutions, and the Federal Trade Commission ready to give us the latest info and take your questions. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization that has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. AARP sponsors the Fraudwatch network, which is our effort nationwide to protect folks from scams. You can learn more about AARP's Fraudwatch network by going to aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. Here in Washington State, we have focused for many years on helping people avoid financial exploitation through education and outreach. Today's TeleTown Hall is part of that effort. While we will be talking today about how the coronavirus is being used by scammers to swindle people, we won't be talking about the virus itself and won't have any public health officials on the line. The best source of health and medical information for coronavirus-related questions is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and it can be reached at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Now, if you've participated in one of our TeleTown halls in the past, you know this is kind of like a radio talk show, and you have the opportunity to ask questions live. You can also call in and give us your comments. We're particularly interested in hearing from folks who may have encountered some kind of a scam related to the coronavirus, so you can share them with our audience. This is about all of us learning. If you would like to ask a question or call in with a comment or an example of a coronavirus scam you've seen, press *3 on your telephone keypad to be connected with an AARP staff member who will note your name and question and place you in the queue to ask that question live. Again, to ask a question or give us a comment or give us an example, press *3 on your telephone keypad. Coronavirus scams are spreading nearly as fast as the virus itself. Right now, fraudsters are using the full suite of scam tools, phishing emails and texts, robocalls, imposter schemes, and more, and closely following the headlines, adapting their messages and tactics as new medical and economic concerns arise. And today you're going to hear plenty of examples of that from our experts. I mentioned AARP's Fraudwatch network earlier. One of the services we provide as part of that program is the AARP Fraudwatch Network Helpline. The helpline serves several different functions. Its primary function is to serve as a resource for victims and their families following a fraud encounter. Trained staff and volunteers, many of whom have themselves experienced victimization, offer support and help to identify resources for reporting and recovering. The helpline team also takes calls from trained fraud fighters who watch for and report fraud to help keep us and the federal authorities informed of trends. And one of those call centers is right here in Seattle in our AARP office. The team also conducts outbound calls as warnings to consumers. For help from AARP and their help call center, call 1-877-908-3360. It's 877-908-3360. Or you can visit AARP Fraudwatch Network again at www.aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. Well, joining us today are a panel of experts, as I mentioned before, to help you and your family recognize coronavirus scams and defend yourself against these fraud tactics. I'd like to welcome Aaron Schneider, who is the Regional Director with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Bill Beatty, Securities Administrator with the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions, and Chuck Harwood, Western Regional Director with the Federal Trade Commission. If you're just joining us, my name is Doug Shadell with AARP Washington, and I want to welcome you to this important discussion about scams that capitalize on coronavirus pandemic. The best way for this program to work is if we can hear from you. I really want to encourage anyone who has a question or a comment to press *3 on their telephone keypad now, and you will be put in the queue, and we will take your question and give you a chance to ask our experts your question or comment. Well, let's jump right into discussing how to recognize COVID-19 and other fraud schemes. I'd like to begin by introducing Aaron Schneider, the Regional Director for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Thanks for being with us, Aaron. Would you tell us a bit about yourself and the SEC and how Washingtonians can recognize securities fraud?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on, Doug, and thank you for everyone on the line. I really appreciate you tuning in today. So I run the San Francisco office of the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's one of 11 regional offices of the SEC throughout the country. My office covers Washington State, as well as Alaska, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Northern California. There's a lot of money in this region. We're responsible for covering almost 1,300 investment advisors that manage over $6 trillion in assets, as well as all the public companies in those states. And we essentially police all investment fraud up and down those states. So while I run the San Francisco office, the views that I express today are my own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Commission. So one of our primary functions is to protect investors in the United States, including our nation's seniors. And we do that in many ways, including enforcing the law against people who commit securities fraud and also educating investors about how they can protect themselves. So, with the rise of COVID-19, it is in some sense no different than any other time of crisis. We see fraud scams arising in response to weather-related events like hurricanes and tornadoes. We see it in response to new technologies. And so these fraudsters are just following the same playbook with COVID-19, touting COVID-19 cures, treatments, medical equipment, and things like that. So knowing this, in late March, our Division of Enforcement formed a coronavirus steering committee to look for these frauds so that we could stop them before they started and try and get back as much money to people as possible. So one of the things that we do is suspend trading in companies that we believe are committing fraud. To date, we've suspended trading in approximately 35 companies that had questionable claims of products or services related to coronavirus prevention, testing, or cures. And, these really run the gamut. And, Doug said at the beginning that you would see how they follow the news, right? And so we've seen companies that falsely claim that they have finger stick tests to test for coronavirus at home, that companies that claim they're making thermal scanning equipment to check for fevers, companies that claim they have large supplies of N95 masks when there was a real shortage, companies that claim they have approved blood tests by allergy test makers, and then a lot of cases against people who are pumping the stock. And by that I mean, making claims on chat rooms and things like that, issuing false press releases, really hyping companies to get people to put money into those companies. We've also seen a lot of people rushing into the market to trade individual stocks, given the volatility in the market. It's also faster and cheaper to trade today than it ever has been before. And so we just want to make sure that folks do their homework. We're also seeing a real rise in organizations that are claiming that they are charitable organizations, and they're trying to help those that are affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of cases where folks are offering bogus CDs. And so, CDs are typically perceived as a relatively safe investment. And lots of times during times of market volatility, investors try to go to investments that feel safer. But we've seen a lot of fake CD offerings that have arisen over the last couple of months as well. And so I just wanted to give you guys, some things that you can do to recognize when you might be confronted with a fraudulent investment. The first thing is high returns. Scammers know that many people worry about whether they have enough retirement savings, and so they often pitch schemes offering unrealistically high rates of return, supposedly with little risk. We always say if an investment sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and it's probably a scam. We also see, a normal red flag is pressure to buy right now. No legitimate investment requires a quick decision, and a lot of our fraudulent promoters will try to pressure folks by claiming that the offer is limited in time or it's only available to a certain number of investors. And so we always recommend waiting until you have the time to do homework or talk to a trusted advisor or family member. Successful scammers also know how to sound professional. They're very good at what they do. So they know that the appearance of professionalism combined with polite manners may lead many people to accept their advice. And so you should never judge someone's integrity by how they sound on the phone or how they sound in their email. We also tell people to watch out for unsolicited offers. So these are things that come out of the blue, a cold call, an email, a social media post that's directed towards you. We recommend being really cautious of any claims that companies can help cure the coronavirus or is converting their business to COVID-19 related support. Anything that comes out of the blue, I would be wary of. Other things to watch out for are free meals or other incentives. Fraudsters often offer free things like a free lunch or a free seminar, some sort of enticement to get you to invest. Waiving their fees, quote, just for you, or giving you a special interest rate. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is no documents. A lot of times when there's no paperwork describing the investment and the risks that are inherent in such an investment, we often find that those are associated with frauds or scams. Also, if there are no public filings, that's another red flag that you should be aware of. And then the last thing I'll say is, just make sure any investment professional that you're dealing with is licensed or registered. Many of the scams that we see promoted are done by folks that are not registered with a securities agency like either the state of Washington or with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. So I'll pause there. I just wanted to give you some of those things that you can look out for to protect yourself. And again, just be wary of anything related to the coronavirus and do your homework first. Not to say that there aren't legitimate companies out there, but it's something to look for. Doug, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Erin. If you're just joining us, that was Erin Schneider from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And this is an AARP TeleTown Hall on how to protect yourself from coronavirus-related scams. And just a couple follow-ups, Erin. And by the way, if you want to ask our guests a question, press *3 now on your telephone keypad, and you can ask a question of our guests. Or if you have a comment, I'd like to know from our audience, and we have over 7,000 people on the line right now, so obviously this is a very hot topic. Call us and tell us the scams you're hearing, because we have 3 top regulators on the line, and they want to hear from our members whether you've gotten any of these calls or not. It could be anything. You don't have to be concerned about whether it's a scam or not. Just call us with things you think might be suspicious. I, for example, Erin, I guess I wanted to ask you first, as I was listening to you talk, you've been in this business a long time. What has surprised you the most about the COVID-related scams compared to other crises you've managed where there's scams emerging? Is it very similar, or are there some differences here that you find particularly disturbing or alarming?
So it's interesting. In some sense, it's similar because we often see people try to take advantage of things. But this, because it is in some sense so unprecedented, and it really plays on people's fears about, their health and whether they're going to be able to take care of themselves, especially when they get sick. I do think it's different than some of the other things that we've seen, weather-related events or things like that. And, also sheer market volatility that we saw in March was making so many people nervous. And, I went through it myself. When I look at my investments and I think, I started to panic a little bit too. But then, you got to remind yourself to just keep calm and follow the advice of a trusted advisor, do your homework. And so I would just say the world scale of the fears that have accompanied the coronavirus makes it a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we're going to come back to Erin at the end, and especially if we have questions that are directed towards the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Let's go next to Bill Beatty. Bill is the Securities Administrator for the Washington Department of Financial Institutions, an agency we have worked with for many years. They do great work, including consumer education, investor education. Thanks for joining us, Bill. Would you tell us a little bit about what the department does and some of the financial scams happening during this time of crisis from your perspective?
You bet, and thanks, Doug. And the first thing I'd like to do is reiterate a statement that you just made. In our work, it is so important for us to hear from people who have been approached or have heard various pitches, because a lot of times in the world of securities enforcement, the cases really don't come to our attention until after the investment is made and after the money is already gone. So anybody who has seen or heard anything, we would love to hear from you. And my thanks to Erin for her great discussion about what the SEC is doing in this kind of very unusual marketplace these days, and how it's helping investors. As Erin pointed out, the Commission is the nation's securities regulator. Similarly, DFI Securities Division, which I head, is Washington's securities regulator. We're the local cop on the beat, and we're focused primarily on protecting Washington's retail investors, such as all the people on the call. I guess first I'd like to talk about a few cases that we've already seen that have a COVID angle and how they're attracting investors. And here's just a list of some of the headlines, and then I'll go spend a little more time on the detail. But headline, exploit the current coronavirus crisis. Headline, 25% returns monthly. Headline, silver lining biotech opportunity. Headline, 1,000% return on investment. If you hear anything like that with regard to any investment, you should be extremely skeptical. These investments that have been touted include things like an offer to trade your account in various penny stocks, low price stocks in the biotech field, and then split the profits with you. An offer of income during the crisis from trading in the commodities and futures markets and splitting the profits with you. A promise for an $8,000 to $16,000 monthly return on investment from selling medical products that are in demand because of the crisis. And the 1,000% return on investment was supposed to come from an investment in precious metals. So one of the common denominators in all these things that I've just talked about is that they were all found on Craigslist. And I think it's important to remember that scam artists don't just use cold calls or social media, when they will use any type of communication to reach you, and they will leverage any advantage that they have in order to get you to trust them. A lot of times we talk about affinity fraud in this area. They'll say, gee, we went to the same preschool, even though that might not have been the case. We were in the same fraternity, sorority, or club. We see each other every Sunday at church, etc. Across North America, state and provincial regulators have identified over 200,000 COVID-related internet domains and have investigated about 250 COVID-related investment schemes. Some of the common themes that we're finding, as Erin mentioned, a play to investors' fear and anxiety. The offer of unusual investments that are unfamiliar to most retail investors, such as trendy assets like cryptocurrencies or foreign currency trading, or investments powered by artificial intelligence. So what can you do? The biggest thing that you can do, you've already done. You're participating in today's call, so you've already taken a great first step. Just remember that scammers always follow headlines, and the biggest headline right now is COVID. All those examples that I mentioned before, you could insert another disaster headline and have the same type of pitch. So pick any disaster or news headline and you will find a scam. The market is up, the market is down, ozone depletion, global warming, you name it, there's a scam or there's going to be a scam surrounding it. Also remember that COVID-related scams can involve almost any type of investment. The COVID-related pitch is just kind of a cover for the overall scheme that's being offered. So they could be a private offering, it could be an oil and gas venture, it could be real estate, it could be penny stock, precious metals, foreign exchange, you name it. I want to emphasize, be wary of investment and opportunities that suggest you liquidate your current portfolio to invest in something better. It might be better for the promoter or salesperson, but not for you. always ask about commissions and other compensation that salesperson is going to get as a result of making this investment. Be skeptical. Ask tons of questions. Seniors are frequently targeted because they rely on investment returns for retirement income. Treat your investment decisions like buying a house, new car, or other major purchase. Do your homework, ask questions, talk to friends, you name it. The last thing I just want to say is please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Investigate before you invest. You can visit dfi.wa.gov or call 1-877-RING DFI, and we will be able to tell you whether the person or companies offering the investment are licensed, whether the investment itself is registered in Washington, and whether we have any cases related to the investment or its promoters. So I'll stop there and for the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Bill. That was Bill Beatty from the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. And earlier we heard from Aaron Schneider, and you're listening to Doug Shadell and AARP and a TeleTown Hall on coronavirus scams. If you'd like to join the conversation, all you have to do is press *3 on your telephone keypad, and we have quite a few who have done that, so we're going to start taking some calls in just a second. Again, if you've experienced one of these scams, you heard Director Beatty say he'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. Press *3 on your telephone keypad to talk to the folks about this. Let's take a call now from Ed in Tacoma.
Hey, I'm here.
Hello, Ed.
I was just wondering if there's any scams on charitable giving.
Charitable giving. Aaron,
Yes.
You want to talk about that? Yeah, I think you mentioned that a little bit. I think Chuck Harwood might talk about it also, but Aaron, you mentioned it first. Do you have any thoughts about that? Charitable giving scams related to COVID?
I do, and we actually on our SEC website have a whole alert about what you should look out for when people are offering charitable investments. And I just want to give you the website. It's sec.gov/OIEA. And the headline is, "Don't be fooled by fraudsters offering charitable investments." And so, again, this is also, people, there is a lot of money in these states, and people know that, and they're trying to appeal to people's, sense of morality and generosity, and trying to say that they're a charitable organization. And so some of the things that we tell people to do to protect yourself is, make sure you check on the IRS's website, whether they actually are a 501c3 organization, to check on their tax status. Although that doesn't necessarily mean they're not legitimate, it could be a red flag. Also, always check the background of the person selling or offering the investment. I think Washington DFI's website can help you do that if the person is registered in Washington, and if the person is registered at all. The SEC also can tell you whether that person has had a disciplinary history, whether there have been other complaints about them before. That's often a huge red flag. Sometimes people will offer to give you something, like offer to do a small favor for you to get you to, give money to their charitable organization. And then a lot of times what we're seeing also is that fraudsters may ask you to agree up front that your investment returns will then be applied to a charitable purpose, and then they're keeping the money for themselves. And really, you can always decide to donate your investment returns after you receive them. You don't need to agree in advance to give them to somebody who claims that they're going to give them to a charity. So there are a lot of cases out there. We recently brought a case against a purported charity that they, essentially used to gain access to hospices and defraud hospice patients. And so I would just say the same things when you're thinking about investing your money. The same types of considerations apply to if you're going to make a charitable donation.
Great, thank you. Anything to add, Bill, or you good?
The only thing I would add is that Aaron is exactly right on all that. But there's also, for true, if you get pitched to make a charitable donation that's not an investment in Washington, you can check with the Secretary of State's office to see if that charity is indeed registered with them.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, let's take one more question, and then we're going to get to Chuck Harwood from the Federal Trade Commission. Brenda.
Yes, this is Brenda Pritchard.
Yes, good. Welcome.
Thank you. By the way, just an FYI, my husband and I look at Charity Navigator, and that seems to be a good watchdog for charities. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yes, I have. It's a good source.
Yeah, so you can just bop in your... Okay, so my question is, probably in April, I was looking for a thermometer. And I thought, this has got to be easy. This is COVID. And I looked all over, and they were saying out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, everywhere. And I found this website where it said they had Braun, B-R-A-U-N, products, and the prices and the amount of stock they had was pretty much unbelievable. And they didn't call it Braun outright, but they Braun Plus or Braun something to buy a thermometer. And I just for fun looked up that Braun Plus thermometer, and there was no such thing. And I realized I was dealing with something that wasn't a good thing. So I didn't order from them. But this whole website was all set up, very good-looking website that said, we've got blood pressure cuffs and thermometers and, you know, how to measure your oxygen level and different things. But I think the whole thing was a scam. So have you found that there are people selling products that they are not really legit online?
Yes, I want to take a shot at that and then let our guest take a shot at that. I myself was the victim of a scam like that in the beginning of this. I want to tell on myself a little bit. One of our big prevention tips has been if you get into a heightened emotional state, you shouldn't make any kind of business decisions. Well, who isn't in a heightened emotional state of anxiety now given this crisis? And early on in March or April, just like you, I was looking not for a thermometer but for masks for my family. And so I was searching on the web, and all of a sudden, of course, I'm on Facebook, and these ads start popping up to buy face masks. And I, without doing any research, found one that said, $29.95 for 3 face masks, and I ordered it, and I never saw my money, and I never saw the face mask. And I found out later if I had done one check beneath the first page of Google, I would have found all these complaints about the company that was selling it. But I was in a panic, and I should know better. And so I think one of them, and I'd be interested to hear what our guests say about this as well, but it's wise of you to have done the research beforehand, because all of us are in this sort of panic mode right now because we've never experienced anything like this before. Aaron, Bill, any comments? And we want to get to Chuck next. So, any thoughts?
This is Bill. I couldn't. I think that was a great analogy there, Doug, and I couldn't add anything to it. So.
Okay, let's get to Chuck Harwood, and then we'll have all three of you available. We have plenty of questioners, but I'd like more. Call in if you've got an example of a scam you've experienced that's COVID-related, or even if it isn't COVID-related. These folks handle all kinds of scams. If you've gotten a robo-dial, there's millions of those robocalls out there. Just give us a call by pressing, or get on the line by pressing *3 on your keypad now. Well, Chuck Harwood is the Western Regional Director with the Federal Trade Commission, and thank you, Chuck, for joining us. How about if you tell us a little bit about your work at the FTC and the Commission and how the Commission is addressing these scams?
Good morning, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank AARP and the SEC and our state securities regulators for also allowing me to be on during this time. This is an important topic. It's a beautiful day here in Seattle, so it seems like a tough time to be focusing on this, but as we all know, this is the topic that everyone knows about, hearing about, and it's causing a tremendous amount of loss, consumer loss, and complaints, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So anyway, but first, what is the FTC? The FTC is a consumer protection agency. We stop unfair and fraudulent commercial practices that target consumers. We file lawsuits. They're based on investigations that we conduct, and we also educate businesses and consumers about their rights and about laws. In the past 6 months, so essentially since the COVID epidemic really hit the front page on a daily basis, consumers have been concerned about deceptive practice and identity theft, and they filed more than, actually the number is now about 180,000 complaints with the FTC. 180,000 complaints in the last 6 months about coronavirus-related issues. That's unprecedented. It's far beyond anything else we've seen at the FTC or anywhere else. For any other sort of situation, scammers, as Bill and Aaron have already mentioned, tend to gravitate to headlines. They use events as the starting point for their schemes. But unlike everything I can recall in my 30 years, we've never seen these numbers. So, thinking back many, many years to the Y2K meltdown we saw, or the Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, or the financial meltdown in 2008, 2009, or even the tragic 9/11 events many years ago, no single situation has generated that number of complaints. And that's because this has continued for so long. It's affected so many people. In terms of losses, consumers are telling us they lost at least $120 million. And that's just people who call us and tell us. The numbers, I'm sure, are much higher than that. So 180,000 complaints, $120 million in losses. I'll just mention 3 types of scams that we've been hearing about the FTC a lot, but there are many more, and your callers have already touched on some of those, and actually they've touched on some of the ones I'm going to talk about in my sort of 3-point scam coverage here. So the first one I want to talk about is what we'll just call them treatment scams. Now, as Doug has already said, we're not doctors on this call, and we can't tell you what works, but we can tell you there are lots of things that don't work, and that's what we're seeing pitched by scammers. Scammers are selling all kinds of fake vaccines and medicines and cures. The FTC, we've heard about everything from a music CD that supposedly would play COVID-resistant frequencies. That sounds pretty wacky, but that in fact is being marketed. But there are also some that sound maybe a little less wacky. Various sorts of intravenous vitamin infusions, acupuncture, chiropractic treatments, bioelectric shields, various kinds of light therapies and CBD products, and oral peroxide gels, and essential oils, and oxygen therapy, to name just a few of the things that we've heard about. The FTC has been trying to keep track of these. We've been working closely with our partners, the FDA. At the FTC, we've sent out close to 300 warning letters now to manufacturers and marketers around the U.S. and indeed around the world about various products or marketing that, frankly, do not work, cannot be proven to work, and in fact may be dangerous in some cases. The simple fact of the matter is there's simply no scientific evidence that there's any over-the-counter product or service that will treat or cure COVID-19. Now, I know we're seeing news in the papers daily about the FDA rushing to come up with new testing protocols, and it certainly is doing that, but those are not over-the-counter products and services you're going to be able to order over the internet. Those are very carefully controlled scientific studies. In addition to those kinds of treatment scams we've been warning about, we've been filing cases in court. For example, a few weeks ago, we sued a company that was selling a product called the Emergency D virus, which was supposedly a scientifically proven way to treat COVID-19. It was, as you would possibly guess, a series of vitamins and other things that really did nothing other than remove money from consumers' pockets, but did nothing else. So that's treatment scams, and we can talk more about that in a minute. And I have a few thoughts about what to do if you're thinking about that area. Second, imposters. What do I mean when I say imposters? Well, imposters are people or companies that try to make you think they're legitimate when they're really not. We're all familiar with the Social Security Administration bogus Social Security scam. In fact, I've been hearing about it again just in the last day or two. People claiming to be from Social Security Administration and wanting to get your Social Security number, something like that, when they're not. The same thing is happening with regard to the coronavirus. We have been hearing about, and this goes back to the question you had earlier, we've been hearing about various entities claiming to be charities that in fact are not calling to be raising and attempting to raise money for supposed coronavirus relief. We've been hearing about entities claiming to be things like the World Health Organization or the CDC, and they're sending emails. Sometimes those emails are an effort to raise money. Sometimes they actually contain malware and are basically an effort to trick the consumer into downloading some kind of a virus or malware when they click on an email message, and they end up with that email on their computer or on their mobile phone, and it can steal the information from consumers. We've also been hearing about scammers, imposter scammers, involving contact tracing. So what's contact tracing? It's something we've all been hearing about a lot more recently because of COVID-19. The way that works is if someone gets a test for a virus, a positive test for a virus, health officials will oftentimes work with that person to try to determine who that person may have had contact with during the time they were infectious. And So they'll get names and phone numbers, and they'll try to contact those people and let those people know that they may have been exposed. They'll also contact, schools and community centers, things like that, to try to look at those people and entities. The goal is to try to get people to take preventative measures to slow the spread of the virus, either by quarantining or doing something else. So that's what a contact tracer is doing. They're simply tracing the contacts of an individual. Probably the real contact tracers, they will call consumers, but they will never ask for things like social security numbers or financial information or immigration status or payments. Unfortunately, scammers will ask for all those things, and we've been hearing about them doing that. They've been calling and saying they're a contact tracer, and they want you, but you need to pay, or they need a social security number to verify who you are, or they need some kind of financial information from you to verify who you are. So that's another scam we've been hearing about that I would characterize as an imposter scam. And the third category I wanted to talk about briefly is online shopping. And we just heard about this a few minutes ago. I will tell you by April, we began to receive reports of unreceived merchandise that were pretty much comparable to what we would hear about during a holiday season shopping, which is the time we always see lots of online shopping complaints when people aren't getting their products and services. Some of those reports were about legitimate companies who were struggling to meet demand. As we know at that point, there were shortages of a lot of product, and some of the legitimate companies were behind it. But we were also hearing about lots of scammers who were launching opportunistic websites, offering things like sanitizer, toilet papers, thermometers, as we just heard about, gloves. Doug, you talked about that. We saw those were all being offered. We also saw a lot of non-delivery complaints about everything from clothes to electronics, and even things like pets people were buying online. And we heard about all those kinds of things being mentioned. We actually recently filed an enforcement action against one of these operations called supergooddeals.com and connected with hundreds of complaints about its operations and shipping delays. Super Good Deals had been selling a variety of PPE products, including disposable masks, including a variety of other things. And they were actually particularly marketing to healthcare workers and others. And you can imagine these folks were desperate for these products, and Super Good Deals was promising to sell them. In fact, they sent nothing. So just a couple thoughts about all three areas I've talked about, and then I'm hoping we'll have some more questions. First, on treatments and cures, the first one I talked about. So I already said there's no over-the-counter FDA-approved prevention or treatment for COVID-19. There are tests going on. If you're not sure about it, if you're not sure about a particular product or service you're hearing about, the best thing I can offer is the FDA's advice, which is if you have a question about a treatment found online or you hear about, talk to your healthcare provider or doctor. Don't believe what you read on the internet. Check with your healthcare provider, check with your doctor. Secondly, imposters. Well, we've already talked about charities a little bit, so I didn't mention that much just a few minutes ago. But obviously, do your research. Somebody mentioned Charity Navigator, one of our callers, great source. When I'm checking out charities, what I like to do is type in the word name of the charity and followed by scam. And it's amazing how often people will put in the name of the charity and they'll put scam in when they're having a problem with the charity. So that's a great way to do a quick check as well. And then also, check with your state, the state Social Security, the state Secretary of State's office here in Washington State. Great information from them. Lots of other sources as well. Contact tracing. I've already talked about that a lot. Another imposter scheme. Don't pay contact tracers. It's important to work with them, but make sure you know who you're working with. We really rely on contact tracing to try to cut down on the spread, but to make sure you're dealing with a legitimate one by making sure you initiate the calls or call them back if you need to. Remember, you don't need to give them any information you're comfortable giving them. You certainly don't need to pay them or give them your Social Security number. And then finally, online shopping. Here's what you need to know about that. If a shopping site says they're going to send you something within a certain amount of time, they're required to do that. If they can't do it, they have to offer you the opportunity to cancel or renew your order. And while you're at it, when you buy something online, an online shopping site, pay by credit card, because that will give you the best cancellation options if you want to cancel. And then finally, I'll just encourage folks to please complain to the FTC when you have problems in any of these areas. Bill Beatty's already mentioned this, but it's complaints that really guide the FTC and guide all these agencies you heard from today about what we should be doing, how we should be responding to this unprecedented crisis. And with that, Doug, I'll turn it back over to you, and hopefully we'll have some more questions. Well,
great, thank you, Chuck. That was very comprehensive, and it's just stunning how many complaints and how big the dollar losses are. If you're just joining us, this is AARP TeleTown Hall on the coronavirus scams. And we're being joined by Aaron Schneider from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and Bill Beatty from the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. And you were just listening to Chuck Harwood from the Federal Trade Commission, who's been working with us for many, many years on these types of things. And I thought it was interesting, Chuck, I heard you say across all of the crises and public events that you've seen, this has generated by far the most number of scams that you've ever seen. What was the one that I think, if you look at those that I asked this of Aaron earlier, either was the most surprising, the most outrageous? Can you think of one that just really stands out?
Do you mean in terms of the particular specific kind of scheme I've heard about?
Yeah, or just an outrageous claim that, I mean, I saw one the other day. I'll just give you an example while you're thinking of it. I saw one the other day that was a display ad for, for $109, you could get an in-home FDA-approved testing kit.
Yeah.
Find out whether you had coronavirus. And I don't believe the FDA has approved in-home coronavirus testing kits, but it's just there for the taking. And then,
Yeah. So I think one of the most outrageous ones I've seen, and this probably wins the Chutzpah Award, was actually an auto dealership marketing operation in the Southeast that was actually sending out letters to consumers saying to them that you can go to this site to pick up your pandemic relief check. And what turned out to be was simply a car dealer trying to get you to buy a car. But go to this. So imagine, so not only were they trying to get people to go out of their houses and travel someplace, but when you got there, you were being subjected to an auto sales pitch.
Yeah, great. Just what you need, huh?
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the phone lines. We have quite a few callers lined up. Let's go to Lynn in Lakewood. Lynn?
Hi, yes, thank you. This is about getting a lot of emails that say, I've won $500,000 or $50,000, but I have to give them my information, and I get about 10 of those every day. I delete them, and obviously I don't send anything because I think I did it once and I got slammed. So that to me would be kind of a scam. These people that send, the emails and say, you won $50,000. Now all I need is for you to tell me your banking information and your email. They sent me the email. I don't know why they want my email address. They already have it. And so usually I just delete those. I mean, it would be happy if I won $300,000 in 2 days, but I didn't. So I just don't believe them, and I think that's a scam.
Yeah. Chuck, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I agree completely. It's a scam. And isn't it interesting? But I've actually had the same experience. I don't know if you listeners have, but I've seen more email spam recently than I think I saw for a while. I think in part that's because for a while at least some of the phone call numbers were down simply because the call centers that were plaguing us were also shut down, but that didn't stop the email spammers from sending out automated emails constantly. Right? If they're asking you for money, it's not a contest you want to participate in. They're just simply trying to steal your money. They're trying to steal your information or something like that. I would aggressively block those emails. It sounds like your anti-spam filter is not working very well. But I think I want to look at whether you can block more of those emails and stop them from getting to you.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We have Dolores.
Yes, I ordered some masks on HQ on TV, and they said they're the 95 masks, and they cost quite a bit of money, and I was wondering if that was a scam. They said you can get on the internet and give them the number, and they say the masks are at the $9.95.
Did you get them when you ordered them, or?
Yeah, I got them, and they fit really nice, like they said on TV. They would fit real nice, but I'm just wondering if it's a true thing to do that. And then they have a light that's a blue light that kills germs.
A blue light that kills germs.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of light it is. It's, you know what kind of light?
I actually know about this a little bit, Doug.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Chuck again. Yeah, so first of all, on the masks, that's a good question about the masks. If you receive them, they're probably legitimate. There have certainly been counterfeits out there, though, so you might want to examine them closely and see if there's some kind of labeling on there that actually shows that they're N95 masks or KN95 masks, are two different models that are the well-known healthcare models. If you have any doubt about them, if you pay by credit card, you can dispute the charge with your credit card company. They want to hear about counterfeiting as well as everybody else does. But if you think they're fine, something like that part went fine. I should note that a lot of times we really don't need the N95 mask for a lot of protection. For a lot of us who are just going out in public occasionally, so for a lot of people, they're leaving the N95 mask for healthcare workers. But as for the light thing you mentioned, there are a variety of light products that supposedly is supposed to cure various viruses on surfaces. And I think the jury is still out on how well those work, particularly in a home setting. We're certainly hearing about them being used for example, in New York City's been experimenting with it on their mass transit and things like that. But those are pretty high-powered and industrial applications. And whether you can, whether you want or even want to have that kind of thing in your house is really open to question still.
Okay, thanks a lot for that answer. Let's go to Jen. Jen?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen. Do you have a comment or a question?
Well, in July we drove to Rigby, Idaho, and some of our friends said that there was something going on where care facilities that had hospice patients that really didn't die of COVID, they were on hospice for other reasons, were claiming that they're dying of COVID to collect a $30,000 benefit from the government, the care facilities were. And so then, the family couldn't be with their loved ones when they were dying because, they were, saying they had COVID. So I didn't investigate that, and I was just wondering if you'd heard anything.
Anybody know anything about that? Sounds like a rumor.
I was going to say, this is Erin from the SEC. I don't know anything about it, but it's certainly something that's worth reporting to the criminal authorities if true.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How about Elena?
I was just wondering if there's any, this is not COVID related, but any way to make these phone scammers quit calling, or the frequency of their contact has just become absurd. I left for a day trip boating, came home, and there was 23 messages on my phone from Angela who said she was representing Apple products and that there'd been a mess up and that someone had gotten into my information in the cloud. And I don't even have any Apple products, but 23 messages, one right after another. I don't even know how long that took her to do, but it was quite irritating. And it just seems like ever since I turned 65 that I get these kind of calls. I never used to get any calls like this whatsoever. And there's a lot of also people calling wanting me to donate money to the police, and they want to send me in a one-time envelope and am asking for my support and a donation. And I just say right out on the line, I've heard this is a scam, and then they just hang up. But it just seems to be, how can someone keep contacting a private citizen over and over and over? Is there any way to stop these calls?
Well, I could take a crack at it, or you could, Chuck.
Go
ahead.
I can only express my sympathy for this, and let me try that. But other than beyond sympathy, as the call numbers are outrageous, and the number of scammers who are calling consumers on the phone lines, it's appalling. A lot of these calls come from offshore. it's really been hard for law enforcement agencies at the federal and state level to crack down on them. We have been trying through a variety of means. More recently, we've been targeting some of a lot of these calls actually are made over essentially from computers, or the computer platforms. Essentially, they make literally millions of calls. And so we've been going after some of the entities in the middle that are actually transmitting the calls, and that seems to be producing some positive benefit in terms of our law enforcement efforts. But in terms of somebody just sitting at home getting call after call after call, I realize that's not very comforting. I can suggest a couple things. These will not be a complete solution, but they are things you can at least do that may be worth considering. The first is to put yourself on the do not call list. I know it doesn't work for everything, but at least will screen out a few calls, and it's worth considering. You can go to donotcall.gov. Do not call is one word, .gov, and put your phone number in there, and that will alert telemarketers, mostly legitimate ones, that they should not be calling you. Second thing to do is to if you're using a cellular service, they have much better call blocking capabilities than your typical copper landline phones. So, look into what call blocking you get on your cellular service, whether it's T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon or one of the other ones. A lot of them now offer call blocking because they know it's hurting their business, and they'll help you set up call blocking if you don't have it set up already automatically. There are also various products that can be purchased that will work as well, or obtained that will work as well with landlines and other kinds of phones to try to block robocalls. The one that I'm familiar with is any called No More Robo, but there are plenty of those as well. I'm not endorsing any particular one. You can check on those as well. The FTC FTC.gov has information on how to block on call blocking. You just type in call blocking or robocalls, and you'll see all this information. Doug, what did I forget?
Nope, I think that's good. That's there's the call blocking. I think is good. No More Robo Killer. There's quite a few that can block those calls. We have time for one more question. I want to give our guests each a chance to just kind of give us their essential wrap up. Don from Seattle. Hello, Don. Don? Okay, maybe not. We're going to still take one more call. We'll take, hold on a second here. Well, how about Betty? Hello, Betty?
Hello?
Hi, Betty. Do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I had Amazon called my husband, and he took the message. Amazon called, said, I purchased something for $1,499. And when I came home, I read the message, and I called Amazon. I didn't call the number that was on the phone. I called directly to Amazon, and they said there was no transactions, and that was my credit card was secured. But my husband had a few months ago, they hacked the computer, and they said they would, the Russians, and he sent them $999, and nothing happened. And we had the computer done afterwards.
Yeah. Well,
so Amazon, there's a fake in the when you look at Amazon, the number comes up, and it's a fake. It's a scam.
Yeah. Well, I think
I have the right number for them, and I called yesterday, and I gave them the number that was called.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That was a very smart move on your part to not call the number. Those are all scams. They're robodialing people pretending to be Amazon, Microsoft. You heard Chuck talk about it. And they're really just trying to either get into your computer so they can get into your bank account or to charge you to repair a virus on your computer that doesn't exist. And so you did a really smart thing by independently looking up Amazon's number, calling, and of course they said it's a scam. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here, and I want to give everybody on our panel of experts just a chance to just come up with some closing thoughts or recommendations AARP members should think about from our conversation today. Erin, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about doing your homework, and I just want to leave you with, a couple thoughts. One, please go to www.investor.gov for two reasons. That's one of the SEC's investor-facing websites. One, check out the person that's selling you an investment. In most cases, they have to be registered either with the SEC or with the state that they're operating in. If they're not, that's a problem. Number two, we publish a lot of investor bulletins and alerts that really highlight all of the investment scams that we've been seeing. So it's a really good way to get yourself educated on what's out there. We also take complaints. Even if you didn't fall prey to the scam, someone else might. So if you suspect it's a fraud, please complain to the SEC. If you can't reach us at investor.gov, you can call our San Francisco office, which is 415-705-2500. And then the last thing I wanted to leave you with is, we work with Bill up at DFI. We work with Chuck at the FTC. We all work together to make sure that complaints go to the right spot and that we're able to help people when they've been defrauded. And so even if you're not sure what the right agency is, please reach out, and one of us will get you to the right spot. And thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Erin. I know you're very busy and very important job in covering multiple states. Bill, you have some final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I think just two or three things. As I said previously, if you've been approached or you see something, please reach out. And as Erin said, it doesn't really matter which one of us you reach out to. We all know each other, and we'll figure out where that complaint might be properly lodged. So please do that. Also, investigate before you invest is always our watchwords. Visit dfi.wa.gov or call us at 1-877-RING-DFI. That's 1-877-746-4335. And finally, in terms of also besides just regular information regarding people you might be dealing with, our website has a ton of information surrounding financial literacy and all sorts of things that I think would be useful to people that are trying to do their best to manage their finances. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Bill Beatty from the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. Finally, Chuck Harwood. Closing thoughts?
Thanks, Doug. I'll be brief because now we're about out of time. I just want to encourage people, as the others have, to please complain. Don't be silent if you think you've been ripped off, or even if you think that there's just a problem out there. Go ahead and let us know about it because we'll still investigate. 4,300 Washington State consumers have filed complaints about coronavirus-related scams. I know that's not all of them that are out there. We'd love to hear from you as well. So, get on. Please complain as well. Complain to the FTC in two ways. Going to ftc.gov and look for the complaint button to file a complaint, or you can call us, just like our last caller called Amazon. But if you want to call us, you can call us at 877-382-4357, 877-382-4357. Thanks, Doug.
Great. And thanks to all of you. We had over 7,500 people on this call today, which is an astounding number. This has been a very informative discussion, and I want to just thank each of the panelists for answering our questions. All of the resources that have been referenced can be found at aarp.org/WA. Again, that web address is aarp.org/WA. And we hope you all learned something that can help you keep you and your loved ones safe from scams and fraud during this very crazy times we live in. This concludes our call today. Thank you and have a great day.